Holy crap, you guys. After 2 days of back-to-back announcements of absolute bangers happening towards the end of the year, Dana White has come out and announced even more fights. We're gonna go ahead and talk about this and break it all down, you guys. Please drop a like, comment down below, and subscribe. So, like I just mentioned, for the last 2 days, Dana White has just been going absolutely crazy, dropping fight announcements back to back. We got earlier, 2 days ago, we got the announcement of the 3 title fights happening, one in November and then the other 2 in December. Then we got 2 fights that will be taking place at the UFC 296 card in December. So now we're going to be going over more fights happening towards the end of the year. Keep in mind that while some of these are in the month of December, not all of them will be part of UFC 296, as it seems that some will be taking place December 2nd and then December 7th. And so we started off with November in Madison Square Garden, UFC 295. We have Benoit Saint-Denis versus Matt Frevola.
Finish him.
And oh my god, this fight is almost guaranteed violence. Now, if you're much more of a casual fan, those 2 names might not be able to ring a bell, but obviously the hardcores, man, we know that this fight has fight of the night potential. I mean, Matt Frevola, how good has he looked lately? I mean, stopping Drew Dober, stopping Atman Azaitar, and then who can forget his beatdown of Valdez, dropping Valdez, I think more than 3 times. It looked like for a while there we were maybe gonna see him scheduled against Paddy the Baddy, just because now we're starting to see Frevola enter the rankings, get around that top 15 range. So it was going to be very interesting to see if, who they would, match him up against. Some people maybe had thought, Renato Moicano, but now we're seeing the UFC is definitely going towards the direction of Benoit Saint-Denis. And man, credit to Frevola, because Benoit Saint-Denis has looked like an absolute killer lately. He's recently coming off his, stoppage win over Thiago Moises, and then, another stoppage victory over Gabriel Bonfim. Those 2 fights, he looked absolutely insane in back-to-back. So, man, this fight is definitely fight of the night potential.
Let me get a steamroller.
Now, going into December 2nd's fight night, keep in mind, we will be getting Jared Cannonier versus Roman Dolidze.
Finish him.
Davison Figueiredo versus Rob Font. And the welterweight return of Kelvin Gastelum against Sean Brady. I mean, wow, for a fight night, just look at the value you're going to be getting. I mean, this is definitely set to be one of the biggest fight nights, if not the biggest of the year. Kind of confused on why Jared Cannonier would be fighting Roman Dolidze after he, beat Marvin Vettori earlier this year. I mean, he looked really good in that fight. Like, we all kind of naturally assumed that he might be, sitting out and waiting for, Costa and Chimaev, seeing what happens with that, maybe even getting a title shot. This would actually be Roman Dolidze's 2nd time, fighting up, the rankings, even with, his last loss against Marvin Vettori. I mean, that fight, I guess you could say it was close, but, interesting decision, from the matchmakers. Interesting fight though, nonetheless. Then, of course, we have those 2 weight class changes, the first one being with Gastelum versus Brady. I mean, we were supposed to see, Kelvin fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, back earlier this month, in September for Noche UFC.
Fortunate news, my fight with Shavkat Rakhmonov is off. I received an elbow that resulted in an open fracture and a few bones that came out fractured in.
I assume that they gave, an offer for that fight to happen again, or maybe the UFC just ended up scratching it off. Nonetheless, though, he will be fighting now another ranked contender, a guy that is just coming off his first professional loss, which is Sean Brady. This match, stylistically, I'm super excited, how, to see how Sean's going to handle, a guy coming down, a weight class, seeing how he will be able to deal with, the middleweight strength of Kelvin Gastelum, and dude, if he struggled with Bilal Muhammad's, striking. He's going to suffer against Kelvin Gastelum. So this is, a very much classic grappler versus striker matchup. Super excited. And then, of course, that second weight class change is Davison Figueiredo's move to bantamweight against Rob Font. For the longest time now, we knew that Davison Figueiredo will be moving up to 135, after his last fight against Brandon Moreno back in the beginning of the year. Then we had that whole weird, scheduling thing where he was supposed to fight Manel Kape, and stay at 125. That fight got scrapped, for whatever reason. But now we have Davison coming in, new weight class, fighting, Rob Font in the top 10. Rob Font's last fight was against Corey Sandhagen, and man, Rob has still been able to to be competitive with all of these bantamweight guys. Obviously he looked his best, earlier this year when, he finished, the undefeated Adrian Yanez, so Rob Font could definitely get something going in this fight. I could definitely see him taking over, with his jab, with him being, I guess like the longer guy, and Davison coming up, being the smaller fighter. But man, oh man, do not question Davison Figueiredo. I mean, this guy has the heart of a champion and is still a champion. Gotta say, out of all the fights that were announced for December 2nd, I am the most excited for Figueiredo versus Font. Then we have the last fight being announced, and this one is actually for UFC 296. You gotta assume this one's gonna be on the main card. We have teammates fighting each other, ranked welterweight contenders, with Vicente Luque fighting Ian Gary. And man, this one's gonna be a very, very fun fight. I definitely expect it, to go all 3 rounds. Vicente's such a durable guy, and man, Ian Gary, being undefeated, I think he will definitely get... it's hard to say, because I could see how people would say, like, Ian's for sure gonna get tested in this fight, but just because they're teammates, they train over there at Killcliff, FC over in Florida. I could definitely see how they don't go as hard and put as much of a pace on each other as, maybe we could think. Beautiful, show of respect between the two guys, and, at the end of the day, it's nothing but business. Thinking about it now, it's kind of a no-brainer putting, Ian Gary in Las Vegas for that pay-per-view card, but I wonder what went into the matchup for Vicente Luque. Vicente's coming off, that, win over, Rafael Dos Anjos. But, we all know now that Ian Gary is legit. This is another, correct step, in the, direction for Ian Gary's career. So super excited for this fight. I don't have an official prediction for right now. Like I said, definitely a fun fight, but I could, more or less see how it's going to turn out. Could definitely see it being, a staring contest. And if they're just going to be playing, from a distance, you got to go with Ian Gary, for that fight. But man, oh man, such fun fights. So excited for these, fights. So I'm just so excited for the end of the year, because, man, it just looks like the UFC is just throwing, Christmas bangers almost, back to back to back. Super excited to see what, else could happen, what, potential fights are going to be in the horizon. Please, you guys, like the video, comment down below, and subscribe, letting me know which fight you guys are most anticipated for.